All right, I think let's kick off. Hello to everyone in the room and hello to everyone online. My name is Sven. It's my turn to run the user group and we run it collectively between Rian, Stefan and myself. So welcome to the January event, first of the year, and obviously we're excited about the event. In fact, sorry, I realize all of this talking, I haven't actually put the PowerPoint slides up. So give me 2 seconds, I will do that and I'll share that. But while we do that, I hope everyone is comfortable online and you can hear me all right. For those in the room, the bathrooms are just through this door, first passage, and then on the right-hand side. Okay, so that's just a bit of housekeeping. And then also, we used to use Zoom for our online platform. Now we're using Teams, and Rian has set up the Teams sessions for the full year already. So those are already published. Is that right? On Meetup? On Meetup, yeah. On Meetup. But the important thing to note is that every event, the Teams invitation is the same. So it's not like there's a new one each time. In the Meetup event, it will still have that information, but it's the same. It's the same one each time. Okay. So that sorts that out. Also, don't forget that we alternate events. So the odd months, January being the first month, it's odd. It is hybrid, meaning in person and online. And then in the second month, meaning February, and recurring like that, then it's online only. Okay, so we're in person 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on. That said, let me share my screen and actually show you that there's Easter and a couple of other complexities. So there's a slight change to the normal pattern. Right, share screen. Okay. All right, sorry, I actually was so busy talking and doing other things that I forgot to put this on the screen. Okay, so let's also maximize that a little bit more. Okay. All right. So basically then, we've already covered that. And let's quickly cover the agenda. There is, besides this introduction that I'm just doing now, we've got one main presenter, Kevin van der Merwe. I'll introduce him in a few minutes. At the end of that talk, I'll talk more about the schedule for the rest of the year and the even and odd sessions and so on, and then we'll close out the session. So there's just a tiny bit of Teams etiquette. Obviously, we want participation, which is wonderful, so it's highly encouraged. But if you can just mute yourself until you've got something to mention and either just raise your hand or depending on if the moment is suitable or not, just feel free to just ask the question. But if you don't have anything to say, just mute yourself so there's not background noise, please. All right, then let's jump straight in. Kevin, I hope you're good to go. Shame. Kevin is our speaker today. He's going to be here in person. However, he's not feeling well and he didn't want to spread the germs. So instead, Kevin is joining us online. Kevin, welcome. Kevin van der Merwe is from Click, IOCO, and he's the Click Sales Director and Data Literacy Champion. Okay, so the presentation today is on data literacy. There's the blurb that's up there. It's all about human success, needing digital literacy, which comprises a few topics, knowledge, language, and skills. And at the heart of that is data literacy. And obviously, Kevin's going to unpack that for us. And we all want to do that so that we can enhance the value of the work that we do on a day-to-day basis with the BI tool of our choice. So, Kevin, I'm going to mute myself now and hand over to you. I'm going to stop sharing. And please just tell me if you are able to share, or do we need to change permissions? Okay.
Let's have a quick look and just make sure I am able to share. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. So I'm going to stop sharing, and just thanks, Mel, for the invite. It's great to meet other practitioners in the data field. This is a topic I'm really passionate about. Apologies I couldn't make it in person. Really looking forward to those pizzas. I rarely ever miss a pizza, but hopefully our voice will hold up. Cool. So I'm going to dive straight in. I really don't mind not getting through the slides because of discussion. So if you got a question, I'm being full screen, so I will not be able to see your hands. So if somebody can call out a question or just interrupt me, it's cool. I'm happy with that. All right. Well, let's head off. Where do we start? We start with what are we all doing here, right? Why are we in this particular game? And we're in this game to convert data into value, right? We know and find ourselves quite fortunate that we're in this incredible field where data is exploding, and the immense power of data has really been revealed in the last few years. We see businesses transformed, and really all the top companies now are data-driven companies. And so what are those elements we need to get value from data? So first of all, we need data, right? That's the foundation of all things digital. Every time something goes digital, it starts creating these streams of data. And so we've got these new streams of data, recording activity, identity, movement, coming at us all the time. So the data is there. That's a constant challenge. We're not talking about the data component today. Second piece is we need great technology, right? And as Sven said, your chosen pieces of technology really to transform that raw data into analytics-ready data, because you need that to really get to the insights that's sitting inside that data. The final component that I want to talk about today is the people aspect. And there's quite a few people involved in this value chain of data, but I know people are often a neglected element. So let's talk a little bit about that. So we throw around the term value from data, and I'm going to throw out my own little definition of value of data. And it's all related back to the, there's a little bit of background noise. I'm not sure if that's from the main room, but that's cool.
We actually can't hear it. So I'm not sure. There is.
No problem.
The voice suppression seems to be working well.
Yeah, yeah.
All good, yeah.
All right, great. So, so if we look at the value chain of data, this particular analogy was done to say most companies compete in this marathon called value to data, but not everybody gets to the end point, and so it likens it to the process. So first of all, is depending on the size of the company, this could be one person, or these could be very big, diverse teams of people in the value chain. There's the collection of the data, right? That data is then moved, it's prepared, and it's made available to business. Most organizations do that and do that pretty well. And then we get to the data visualization bits where we create our ad hoc reports, our visualization dashboards. And that's really where a lot of companies go, great, we've achieved value, we've provided insights to the business. But really that's where the fun bit starts, because that's where the people with the IP that understands the business and the customers and the processes really start analyzing those data and start seeing where the anomalies is, why are things happening in the business, and they get to some insights. And that's not value yet, right? And those insights then need to be communicated to the decision makers, right? So once that insight is communicated, even that is not value. It's when a person actually finally makes an improved decision because of all of the stuff we do. That's the only time data gets unlocked. And the interesting bit is, if you look at this data value chain, the first half of the people is where the BI professionals sit, right? Everybody from the data teams, the ETL teams, warehousing teams, data visualization teams, maybe even your data science teams. They're all highly data literate. But they don't make the business decision that unlocks the value. It's really that last mile where the business interacts with the data that we see the value unlocked. And that's where our challenge lies, right? And that's what we're trying to move. Gartner had a good quote a couple of years ago, and it said it's clear that we have this massive data literacy, data fluency challenge, and that we need to address this massive skills gap to be competitive in the new economy. They predicted that 80% of companies will initiate data literacy or fluency competency developments right there. This quote was done just before COVID hit. So it's a few years old, put a massive pause on things, but we think it's still highly relevant. So, okay, so we're talking about data literacy and that business users don't have it. What did the numbers actually say? So this was a significant study that was done, about 7,500 respondents, and they were across multiple continents. Unfortunately, Africa wasn't included, but give or take a few percent across industries, across continents. This was pretty much what the data showed, right? 24% of business decision makers felt that they didn't have the correct data literacy skills to get that value from the data. C-level much better. 32% of them felt confident that they've got that particular skill set, and then 21% of, let's call it, Gen Zs, um, going into the marketplace very app driven, very digitally savvy, but don't really understand the data that's lying underneath the surface. And we feel this is where the opportunity lies, right? It's with that gap there, what percentage of people we can actually address to make better decisions from the data to get to better decisions. It's a huge opportunity. So what is that particular skill set? Just so we, we're playing off the same wicket. So first of all, this is the formal definition: the ability to read, work with, analyze or investigate, and communicate with data. What are we talking about? Reading data. So that could mean a couple of things. First of all, if somebody puts a spreadsheet in front of you or some raw data, you actually have the ability to tell what the different data types are that you're looking at. Or it could be somebody puts a report, dashboard, or visualization in front of you. You have the ability to recognize what that visualization means and be able to interpret it quickly. Generally a strong capability within business, particularly with data visualization tools. Work with data is a little bit more of a power user kind of skill moving into BI professionals, but we know data is never clean, data is never ready, and there's always more data that wants to join itself to that data to give us a bigger picture of what actually happened or is happening there. So working with data is a critical skill, even if it's just for prototyping in business, and I generally, doing it already. Investigating or analyzing data, that is when you start digging into that data, the very basics of data, sum, means, averages, significant difference, pivoting, graphing. Are you actually able to interact with that data, analyze that data, and get to insights that actually make sense and are sound? And then the final leg of data literacy is the pillar of communication skills, also known as data storytelling, often lacking in BI teams or even in data teams where there's high level of reading, working with skills, but not necessarily the ability to communicate that clearly. But very important, particularly for the business users, to be able to find that insight and then unpack it as a data story to lead people to a conclusion so they can actually make a decision, not just walk away with the aha moment and then move on with their lives. At this point, quick pause. Any questions or comments? We're good, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
there you go. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, the room was muted here. Just is there any clarity on the process they used to determine this data fluency? Was it a type of survey that was sent out? Yeah, just keen to understand that process.
So yes, absolutely. So there's a couple of sources of data, right? This particular survey was self-reporting. In other words, this is the definition of data literacy. Do you rate that you have the right levels of skills to do this effectively? So that is the one source of data, but there is also more formal data literacy assessments that we'll be talking about in this session.
Okay, thanks.
Right. So if data literacy is the goal, what does a data literate person look like? And this is really what we're trying to strive for in the program, is to give a set of knowledge and skills that will lead to certain behaviors and attitudes. And we see these in data literacy people. So the first element is knowledge. And this is also known as the language of, second language of business is data. So before you can communicate in a particular language, you have to have the basic language of that subject area. For example, if I go to France and I go sit in a room full of French people, I'm going to find it difficult to communicate in that room, right? We'll get by with some basic gestures and maybe catch a word here or there, but that's going to be troubling, as well as, let's say I go sit in a room with petrochemical engineers and they're having a meeting about a technical problem they're having. If I do not have the language of petrochemical engineering, I'm going to find it difficult to understand what they're saying and add to the solution, although I might be a expert in my particular field. And in the same way, data has got a language, right? We talk data, and it starts from the most basic concepts like structured and unstructured data, metadata, metrics, measures, and it can get really, really complex. And most business people do not understand this data. So when they go into a boardroom and they start talking about data to solve problems, the people without the basic understanding of the language generally have to stand back because they can't contribute as they should to that particular discussion. Then you also need an understanding of data moves through the organizations, different analysis methods and data visualization practices. These are seen as foundational knowledge pieces to be part of the data conversation. But layered on top of that, you need actual skills, right? So it's one thing to understand what a line graph is, but it's a different thing to actually read it, or maybe a scatter plot's a better example. Also, the preparation of data for analysis, the basic analysis skills, as I mentioned, from sums, means, averages, all those core fundamental knowledge pieces of exploring data, creating visualizations, and then, of course, the skill set of communicating that data effectively. But if we put those things in place, we generally see the more data literate people do utilize data more resourcefully, right? So the data that is put in front of them, they can put the pieces together. There is this attitude of continuously improving the data, not, oh, this data isn't right, I can't use it, but rather acknowledgement that there is a process and surfacing incorrect data is actually valuable. They would be the ones that in a situation, business situation, would say, hey, I think we actually have a piece of data that can help us, solve this churn problem or delivery problem or whatever business problem we're faced with. And generally, they also want to spread data literacy to others and also give them that particular skill set. The attitudes are generally, I find in this community, inclusive. People are confident when they work with data as opposed to very unsure. They're alert to the opportunities, but also the threats that live in data or incorrectly presented data. And they're also ethical. Not only do they understand the rules around POPIA and what you can and cannot do, but they also have an ethical approach to, just because I can do it, does it mean I should do this with the data? Is it the right thing to do? So ultimately, that is what we're trying to achieve, is to create a community, a business community of more data literate individuals will ultimately help us lead to the point where we get that value out of the data more often. And there's rewards, right, for investing on this. So first of all, let's go back to the data. Another study, the Data Literacy Index, then went after that initial study and said, is there actually numbers to support this? And there's a couple of things that were highly correlated to high data literacy levels. But for me, the bottom line number was organizational performance. Organizations that had a high data literacy score outperformed their peers in market cap by 3 to 5%. So at the bottom line, you perform better. And I think obviously it's because you are able to make decisions faster, but those decisions are better quality decisions. And that, across multiple divisions, across multiple layers of the organization, starts adding up and gives you that competitive edge. Of course, it also means efficiency improvements. A lot of people battle with data, but they still need to get to the numbers. So something that should take 20 minutes to do becomes a 3-day exercise involving 3 different people, just to get, to something the way if you had the appropriate skills, perhaps you could have gotten to that insight, made the decision and moved on with your day job, whether you be a lawyer, a marketer, engineer. Selfishly for us as data practitioners, ultimately, we also want utilization improvements, right? Nothing sadder than having a bunch of licenses on the shelf or usage numbers, people pulling one report, putting it in an Excel or just getting a number and really not utilizing the power that's sitting in the tools and the data. And so when we get people to actually utilize the tool, it's also a way for the data leaders to show a return on data investment, because it's like a proxy for success to a large extent. It's critical to digital driven transformation. I'll add AI to that as well, machine learning, any of these key digital innovations, because all of it, as I said, creates data and it uses data. So you need data for all of these things. And I think there's also, again, a people aspect here. There's people who are looking to develop their key digital skills are looking towards organizations that's offering key digital skill enhancement programs. And data is core to all of that. So I think it also allows you to retain the right staff because they see there's, a future for them. But it also gets you to attract the right staff if you've got the right digital enablement programs within the organization. Yeah, so I think that's end of part 1. It's really, I suppose, preaching to the converted around the challenge of data literacy, but also the opportunity that it presents to us to improve our data usage and value. Just pause there for a second. Any questions?
No, thanks. I'm obviously eager to hear, the suggestions to how to improve all of this, because you are perfectly correct. We're all quite comfortable with data, I presume so, and then we presume everyone else is, and then obviously that's where things can fall flat.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, this program was born out of frustration, where we did everything we could perfectly, right? We got the right tools in place. We got the data beautifully shaped and it's analytics ready. We built the right reports and dashboards. We gave people tool training, to the business. We got the requirement spec just right, and then we put the stuff out there, and the usage is disappointing. It's people there's this 30-40% that jump in, and this other mass that don't use it as they should. And it was always a missing piece of the puzzle for me until, in 2018, I came across data literacy. So what do we do about it, right? That's the bottom line. So we've developed a program, and I'll share that blueprint with you as some ideas. There's obviously more than one way to skin a cat, but let me share our approach. So first of all, you need a map to do a journey, and a map has got the lay of the land, but it also has a beginning point and an end point, right? So endpoint, we know what it is. We've looked at a data literate person. We've looked at those pillars: reading, working with, analyzing, and communicating with data. But what am I training who? For what purpose? So really, the beginning of it is an assessment phase to understand our current state, to say, where are we as an organization, as a department, and as an individual, and how does that relate to my day job, right? Not everybody has to be a data scientist, but everybody needs to have the right mix of skills for them to do their job now and probably in the next, looking at their role in the next year effectively. So starting point is assessment. We'll look at that in some more details. Second bit is actually, the training. You need to then give people the actual training that they require to give them that not only knowledge, but also skills in terms of data. And then finally, there's a big piece, and I wouldn't say necessarily sequentially, it's third, sometimes it's the most important bit up front, is culture adoption, is how do we get buy-in from our executive? Generally, they understand the problem once confronted with it or it's verbalized. The mid-level management, who's the very busy people in the data literacy program, because they actually have to run around and get all of these bits and pieces organized, but also very importantly, the actual business users who don't necessarily see the value. They've got day jobs, they're really good at their day jobs, and this data thing is just something that they need. Or it's people who have a very real data fear. They don't know data, they missed that data boat, it wasn't taught in their degrees, and they are being exposed as an area where they don't necessarily are not literate, and hence the word fluency, because it does scare and offend some people. And so you have to get all of these people on board, understanding the benefit of it, and get buy-in to actually work over time to weave a strand of data into that organizational culture. So let's drill into the nuts and bolts of it. So for us, the start of this process is really a kickoff workshop, typically a face-to-face workshop with some of the key players within that either department, organization, and it's a mix of business and data, and that's where we really unpack the current structures, the challenges, the opportunities, the structure of that organization and the group that you're going to assess, and how do you want to analyze that data. Once you have that information, you can then structure online assessment, and the online assessment really is some demographic questions. Sometimes there's a set of KPI questions if KPIs are highly used in a particular department to see if people understand that key pieces of data that they work with. But mostly it's a set of questions that test you on the 4 pillars, right? So either you know you don't know how to read data, work with data, analyze data, and tell data stories. And a set of particular questions around those 4 pillar areas will quickly give you an indication of where you are in your data literacy scale. Once we've got that information, we take the data and we prepare a data literacy report that gives you, information to make data-driven decisions around your program. This thing that gets delivered to the organization, and one of the things that you're going to get out of that report, if you do it right, is you're going to have segments, right? The dream of the segment of one is wonderful, but it's not very practical. So you have to put people in segments. And how we see it, there's 4 main segments in the business community. This program is aimed at the business community, but often we find there's kind of high overlap with the junior analysts, people who have moved into a data role but not necessarily had a formal data education. So let's talk about these segments. The first segment is individuals who they don't get it, they don't understand data, they don't have the language of data, and they don't really know how data is going to affect them, not only on a personal level, but also at a professional level. And so there is some work to be done to lay a proper foundation, not only in explaining the value to them personally and professionally, but also give them the language of data and a few core skills around visualization and analysis. The second group is probably where most of your organization falls in, depending on the organization, and those are consumers, right? These are the guys that have already got their spreadsheets, they already got their Power BI license or the Kik license or their Tableau license, and they're doing some basics on there, but they really need to start learning to work with more confidence, do more advanced things, but also how to surface the value of that data more effectively. That's also touching on data storytelling, and you also need to start looking at, some of the ethics components there. The next segment is your smaller segment, and those are the guys who are already power users. You know who they are. They're your friends, they're your allies, they're always asking you for more, always challenging. And they really need to level up, right? It's time for them to really understand the different data types, pivots, more advanced analytics concepts, and definitely need to surface the power of data storytelling. They need to start, they're going to be your allies in moving the data culture forward. And finally is your elites. Your elites are the guys that basically, score in elite already. This program's not really going to teach them anything. If you score in elite, this program's probably not for you, and you're going to be pulled into more of the data culture activities and be a data champion. If you score in consumer and power, it would make sense for you to learn the things of consumer and power and then put it all into practical use. So we often find people go through power and then go into the lead course, which is a practical hands-on project. You go all the way from sitting down with business users, designing a scope, doing some data work to get your data prepared, then creating a dashboard in tool of choice, and then finally presenting a data story, which is the purpose of it all, is to find those insights and present that back to your business community based on the requirements that you gathered. And that's really where it all comes together, right? All the knowledge, all of the skills get put to the test. You design your project and you present it back to your peers. And that's how we see the different segments. And I won't go into the actual training modules too much. But, as I've already said, you've got these data foundational modules to really understand data, what it is, how it's moved and stored, how it's prepared, the different ways to access it. We think quite importantly, the different roles in data, who are all these people that you're going to have to work with, because data is a team sport. What does a business analyst do? What does a data analyst do? What does a data engineer do? What's the role of a CDI and CDO? Data science, difference between them and statisticians. All of these things are important, not only to understand what they do in the data value chain, but also to identify who they are in your organization, so you can connect, introduce yourself, and build a network of data players in your organization. At a foundational level, we also then talk about the value of data for them as an individual. We live in a data-driven world. Data is going to continue to increase, not only on our phones and our watches and our cars, but everything is data-driven now, and you need to be able to interpret what data is. And then the principles of data-driven decision-making. The consumer, the skill stuff start layering. This is, we kick it off with asking the right questions. And this is really, again, selfishly for BI practitioners, to avoid the frustration of doing the same thing 4 times because business didn't ask the questions correctly. The scope, wasn't defined clearly. So teaching business really to ask the right critical questions when asking for data help. The principles around design, etc. Visualization fundamentals and best practices. Tied up with that is the key skill of critical thinking, as well as understanding biases and what biases you bring into analysis. And then BI technology and dashboards. What basics of dashboarding? What does a good look like? What does a bad look like? What are some of the key principles behind that? And then data storytelling, of course. What is a data story? How do you build one? How is it structured? How do you deliver one? All the core skills around that. Power, as we mentioned, a lot more hands-on. This is where you now start working with some SQL. All of these are practical hands-on, working with data aggregations. Advanced analytic concepts, not necessarily teaching them how to do k-means clustering or linear regression, but explaining what these things are so that when you see the business opportunities, you're able to go and talk to your ML teams and say, hey, I think there's an opportunity in the data. How can we better address our leads with advanced analytics, for example? Working with data analytical functions, as I mentioned multiple times, the basics there, the sums, the means, the averages, how to actually do those things. Pivot charts, which is the foundation of, I suppose, all BI tools ultimately. And then data storytelling, presenting that data. And finally, data governance and ethics and security, because now we're starting to put that in your hands. You've got some responsibilities, but you also have some laws you need to be aware of before you start doing certain things with data. And finally, that elite program, which is the hands-on full workshop, scoping business requirements, data wrangling, prototyping, dashboard development, and finally, dashboard delivery and data storytelling. And that's our interpretation of how to actually move the needle. So first of all, assess, understand current state, and what that person needs in their particular role to move things forward. Secondly, give the appropriate training for the appropriate person for their role, whether that be the reading, working with, analyzing, or communicating with data skill sets. And then finally, I think there needs to be an element of classroom training, particularly as you go up the complexity and up the segments. That's where experienced hands-on instructors that actually live this is quite important, as well as LMS, learning management system support. Yeah, I think that is about it, Sven. And team. And so, yeah, I would love to open it to questions or comments and debate.
Sorry, we just had to unmute there quickly. Kevin, thank you for that. And I, for one, found that very, very interesting and very practical and relevant. So I'm hoping the others around this room and those online are thinking the same thing. Are there any questions, anything that wasn't clear or you wanted to ask Kevin to expand on?
I was thinking, perhaps we could use, so pizza's only coming at 6, so we still have some time. But we could use the time to just maybe share some, possible data literacy stories or challenges or problems or whatever you'd like to call it, and see if we could learn something from that. And Kevin, it would be interesting to know, how you would approach that from a data literacy program perspective. So I'll just start as an example. This is quite some time ago. We were developing a new application to manage the operational risk within a big bank in South Africa. And at some point, we just wanted to see how much this new application is being used, because we were running with a change management process to get it integrated and get them off their old operational risk management system. And at the time, I was developing a report on Power BI actually to just show the usage of this new app that we're developing. And there was a change management champion within this bank that had to integrate it and get it adopted. And the report that I showed didn't paint a very positive picture of how it was adopted. And I remember the person just responding with the words that, "I don't like this data." And I was kind of I didn't know what to say, because it's what the data said. I couldn't show it in any other way, and it wasn't being adopted very well. So my understanding is that that person probably felt put on the spot, because the change management process actually wasn't going that well. But just like a way that got me thinking is, so I actually come from a mechanical engineering background and used to work at power stations. And okay, so I'm digressing a little bit, but at a power station, you get lots of sensors, you get a lot of data, and you can, you've probably heard of the concept of a digital twin. And you can run simulations with your digital twin, or it's a way to show you what's happening with your power plant and so. And I realized in that same way, we get data from a business or some business process or something that we're monitoring, even if it's sales. That's actually just a representation of that business. It's a model or a perspective of that business. And I realized at that point in time that this person that was responsible for the change management process had a completely different perspective and actually did not trust the data enough to see the real picture. And yeah, I didn't get much further than that, but it showed the truth of what the process was like. So yeah, Kevin, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I suppose the ultimate question with humans is what's in it for me. In that data, there wasn't much in that particular perspective, and I think you talked to it. However, in that data, if you dig a little bit deeper, perhaps there was insights into who is adopting it and why. Is there particular departments that are adopting it more? Who are some of the key users that you thought would adopt it but didn't adopt it? And how can we help you with this data to help you with the change management process? I think that potentially could have swung that person over because they were probably already exposed and under pressure, and that that data put them under more pressure. So yeah, I think understand your stakeholders, what's their perspective, and try and accommodate that when designing.
I've got a comment.
Go for it, Ezra.
In development, a lot of time, technical people, the developer coming there, they get a brief, and they're coming with the attitude, this is it, good for you. The basic is to work with the user who's going to use it. If you work from the beginning and you have a continuous engagement with them, then you produce a report that the user is going to use all the time. If you do it in isolation and come and tell the user, this is it, that's what you need, most likely will fall on the face like that.
And what's very clear is almost every user that you create a report for is going to want to test the data, test your report to make sure that it adds up. Okay. And it's going to take a long time to get used to it. It's okay, now I trust the data, and whatever this thing tells me in 3 months' time or in 6 months' time, I'll believe it. Okay. Yeah.
You see, most of projects, I'm not saying all projects, most projects, they already got something.
Yeah.
They've got some figure, if that in accounting, business, they're analyzing manually or through Excel. They've got the information. So you'll have to take what they've got and enhance it.
Yeah.
If you don't enhance, just visualize, okay, maybe it's nice, you'll have to enhance it. And you'll have to work with them to ask them what they want. A lot of times, they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, they don't know. They want basically what they've got, just maybe easier and so on. So it has to be continuous engagement. It's not like somebody gives you a brief on a A4 page and basically you're going to do that and you think that you'll have to work continuously with the user.
That's a given point on the scoping initially that must be put in.
Yeah,
go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I just want to underline that. I think that's why the program's culmination of success is did you manage to tell a data story that relates back to the original requirements? It's not how correct is. That's a given. You have to get the data right. You have to get the data quality right. You have to build a technically sound dashboard. But that is not success. You only succeed once you understand your audience, what their perspectives are, and you can deliver that technically, but as well as in a story. And I think often that's lacking in a world where business and BI were separated. We were different silos. Those worlds are certainly merging from what I can see.
I actually really like that. So success is not the report is correct and the data is all in the right place. It's actually that the spec and what was delivered match each other and people can actually work with and act on that. I think, Kevin, if I've understood you correctly, that's success rather.
100%.
With adoption.
Yeah.
With adoption.
Kevin, I think it's easy teaching users where to push the buttons, but I often wonder, how do you get them to critically stand back and look at the data? How does that fit in this program? Because that's not a skill I have ever been able to teach somebody.
Yeah, I think some people do not want to be taught, and so they're going to go on the course and they're not going to be taught. But most people want to learn and are open-minded, and I think that's why we included the module around critical thinking. Right, first step is to getting better is to admit you got a problem, and what we do straight up front is talk about biases. To go, what biases do you bring to this table? And I'm like, no, not me. I'm there, I'm forward thinking, almost none. And then you go through a list of biases and you go like, wow, yeah, I've got that, or I bring that. Sometimes I shorten the process. And so once you've got that understanding, you can then teach people critical thinking skills, right? If there's a specific frameworks where you can ask the basic stuff, what, when, why, where. If you can just get people to think beyond that and be curious. Curiosity is so important in this area. I think you can go a long way. People who are closed-minded, good luck with that.
Kevin, during your presentation, I was thinking, I wonder if there's programs out there and people that do this kind of training. Then it became clear that clearly IOCO does that. And, you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've partnered with a company called Next, and that is the data literacy program that we take to our customers, because ultimately we want return on data investment, right? We want people to utilize the solutions that we put out there and get value. That means they invite us back, give us the next project, etc., etc. So this was a piece of the puzzle for us to address the data literacy skills in business users. What we have found is that there's quite a bit of the entry level tier of juniors in this field that also have gaps. And the third thing is you've got specialists who can't see the whole picture. For example, they might be a data engineer and they are really good at connecting things, moving them, and maybe shaping them, but they don't necessarily work with the end customer often. And so that full set of skills around, scoping, data storytelling, etc., really help them to become better data engineers, because they do data engineering with a better purpose and clarity. I think that was too much, and I'm not even sure I answered your question. Terry, on mute. You're on mute. There you go.
Sign language. I was going to say, I think you did answer the question correctly or properly. All I would ask you to add is, if someone here or online is keen to find out more, do they contact IOCO or do they contact Next? And if it's Next, is it any KST? I think it was something.
Yeah, it's Next. I mean, we've got a very close working relationship. As I mentioned, I came across the data literacy concept in 2018 in Florida. And since then, we've spent the last 4 years developing this program. Certainly can chat to me, connect you with the guys there, and we can have a discussion around how I suppose for some, resell this to my customers and make money off it, or I am a customer and I need to address this in my community. How do we do this? Both options are open.
Cool. Well, we'll come through you. I think that's probably best. Are there any other questions? I've got one more, but I don't want to hog the microphone. Anyone else?
I'll ask.
Please go ahead.
How do you handle the people hiding because they have a fear of coming across as incompetent?
Oh, great question. So it comes back to that data culture piece, right? So we put it initially at the end of the program to use the data champions to create, communities and data literacy Thursdays and stuff like that. But really what we found is we need to do a whole lot more work up front. And this discussion we're having here, this presentation, just making people aware, it's obvious, but it's not. Once you see it, you go like, yeah, that makes sense. Why is the end users not getting this skill set? Because ultimately they need to make the decision. So you have to get buy-in. And data fear is real. We've actually gone to a point where the data literacy report is sent only to a few key members of the management team at an aggregated level. Individuals only receive their personal data literacy report as an individual. Some management teams choose to share that in their smaller group meetings, and some keep it confidential for that reason. I've had senior managers, absolute brilliant in their field, right? Ask us to remove them from the data literacy report because they are scared of being exposed. And I've seen it multiple times. So this concept of data fear is a very real thing, and people don't talk about it, right? So you'll have some very senior people with gaps not addressing it because they don't even have the basic language of data. And these are often the people we have to work with. So it is a real challenge. There's a couple of strategies we found, but I think there's more ways to do it. I'll be keen to see how we overcome it.
Thanks. So I mean, obviously that for the lower level staff is important, but like executive level, I mean, that's a big problem. And again, this whole thing, I mean, there's a big data privacy issue too, which you raised now. Not having your peers see you as incompetent or.
Yeah. It helps to understand that only 32% of executives are data literate. It helps to know that only 20% of business decision makers. So you're not alone. You think you're alone, but very few people actually have the skill sets that power users have and are expected to have in their jobs. Like, just nobody's taught them. Nobody's given them the opportunity to learn.
What I think is nice about a third-party company doing this is it makes it feel a little bit more impartial. Where if you try and run an initiative like this inside your own company, then people will be much more, leave me alone. Yes, if it's you, then I think that makes it a bit easier.
I wanted to say maybe that number is not right because people are scared to say they are illiterate, so they say they are literate.
And you don't know what you don't know, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. We've also done sort of an in-between step, which we call data literacy master classes, which might be a little bit deceptive because they're not master classes, but they are summary classes of tracks, right? So it's a foundational to actually say, right, guys, we're going to give you a master class. In an hour, we're going to teach you a whole bunch of stuff. And then we just give little key elements from all of the courses, amazing little aha moments or learnings, and they go like, wow, this is cool stuff. I can learn this. Like, it's not that I'm stupid. I just haven't been given the opportunity to learn this stuff. And that sometimes helps to take away a lot of the data fear and build some excitement to go, yeah, this stuff is doable. It's accessible. We buy in.
I have one more. Nobody else has one.
Hit it.
Quantifying the value of data projects, because yes. Do you have any answers on that?
Yes, it's difficult, right? So one of the banks asked me to go, all right, tell us what is the outcomes we're going to get you? How can we measure this? And so I wrote a whole piece on it, but ultimately what we decided on is if you can measure pre and post in a couple of ways. First of all, the data literacy assessment pre, and then run another one post to say there was tangible movements in skill sets and knowledge around reading, working with, analyzing, communicating with data, but also look at your BI tools typically have log files, right? and you want to look if there is an improvement on a couple of things. So are people using it more post-training? What is the length of that session? Are people more effective, or they're more engaged, etc.? So we almost see usage ultimately as a proxy for value, because you don't know what they're doing. You know, what decisions are linked to that, what other factors contribute to that decision. It's not just data. It's too complex. You can't, it's difficult to pinpoint it. The last thing I would say, when you do data projects, define value upfront. So when the project is finished, you can say, yes, this was successful because we met X, Y, and Z, as opposed to we've delivered something. That's going to help you get your next project. So it's, I don't know if that's a bit of a cop-out. It's a very difficult question, but that's the best I could do.
I think you did well. Awesome. The question I was going to ask earlier was my observation is when report adoption isn't strong in a company, I'm normally going to suggest that it's the top level that are not using it properly, or not using data in their meetings with their next level. Okay, so if you get the big bosses to ask questions that can only be answered with reporting and data, then the next level down will make sure that they don't come to those meetings unprepared, which means they'll use the reports that have been made available to them more proactively, and then it just ripples down, you know, further and further. But whether I'm right or wrong, the key is if only a third of the C-suite are comfortable with data, you will find that 2/3 are actually not going to ever have those kind of discussions.
They end up being older people. They're more difficult to train.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And they've got people doing it for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a puzzle. Like, it's not one, and this isn't the silver bullet, but certainly I've found this is going to be a key part of that puzzle. You can't leave either one of those three groups behind. You have to get them caught into the vision, excited, and then actually give them those skills. And it's going to be a process. Like, I'm not going to give you 7 modules of an hour and a half each, and you're going to be data literate. It's going to be move you one step ahead to your next level of data literacy. You're going to live it, you're going to try it, and then you're going to move to your next level. It's complex, but certainly I find that this needs to be in place. Otherwise, you're not going to optimize your outputs.
Yes, Taran.
I'd be really interested to find out if there was a way to, or like a website or something where they had what kind of reports are needed for each sector. So like health or different finance. So these are the kind of basic reports that you should have if you're doing this, or these are the reports that you need for this kind of sector, you know, because each industry is kind of different, and it'd be great if one could find some kind of resource like that.
I don't know if it's available online. I certainly recall roughly 10 years ago seeing some sort of a list. Some company had prepared like a KPI list, and if you're in manufacturing, here's 100 for you, or whatever. If you're in financial services, here's 100 for you. You know, that's
exactly.
Anyway, but I can't remember where it was, or you know.
I actually have that list. I can share it. There's like thousands of KPIs in there per sector. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, sure.
There's also finding the ones that aren't in the list will give you.
Yes. Yes.
Nice.
Cool. I realized that the online people have been particularly quiet. I don't know why.
I think there's a good comment in here.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. By BIUG-SA, sorry, it's Nsike. On our teams, the name and surname is normally switched. So, excellent presentation, Kevin. Thank you. My path of building experience and fluency over time without much of a formal training path has shown me that business needs or demands have meant my abilities have been built as a patchwork of skills that don't fall in a neat linear progression. So I can definitely appreciate the relevance and importance of role and level-based training to become well-rounded with solid foundations. I think if I can also just reflect on that, it's, from what I've seen, it's rare that someone attends, you know, a workshop or some type of quick session to, let's say, understand the importance of data literacy. I think it's something that needs to be collaborated with the business. You know, on whatever engagement you do, even if you use some type of proof of concept as an example, collaborate on that, and then in that process work on improving people's data literacy, and as a result get them to understand that importance of data literacy, because then it actually sticks. They have that experience.
All right, excellent. Look, we're at 6 o'clock. Obviously, anyone's welcome to stay on, both online and in person, beyond this. I mean, I don't know if there are any other questions, but those who feel they need to drop off, they can go. All we've got left is just to go through the agenda for the rest of the year. It'll take a couple of minutes, and then we can just mingle and, you know, chat about it. Look, that's as if there aren't any other questions. If there are, please go ahead, and otherwise we'll wrap it up. Yeah. Okay. In which case, Kevin, thank you very, very much on behalf of everyone here, and that's in person and online. I found that tremendously helpful. I'm glad there was a lot of interaction, lots of questions. I've got your contact details. I'm just trying to think, just for those online, if you don't have Kevin, well, I don't know if you want to put your details in the chat. Otherwise, I can put my details in the chat and I can refer them to you. Probably easier.
Yeah, I'll drop
it just goes direct there. It's probably best. All right, excellent. And in the meantime, I'm just going to share my screen because I just got to do a tiny bit of admin here quickly. Right, so we've gone that screen there. Okay. All right, so just as a reminder to everyone, what I started saying earlier and what we say every time, the odd months are hybrid events, the even months are online only. We try as a guideline to say that the odd number months is one main talk, meaning what we had today, and sometimes also a hands-on workshop, which we didn't do today. The topic of that workshop is normally, just to look at the arrow on the screen there, normally comes about from the even month sessions, which are news, BI news and BI flashes. So sometimes something will come up there, which we could go away, practice, try it out on our own time, and then at the next session, which would then be the odd numbered month, the hands-on workshop, we then collaborate and say, well, I found it easy or hard, and I got stuck here or whatever. We've done that on data marts, we've done that on Fabric, we've done that once or other, 2 or 3 other times as well. So we don't always do that, but that's the main theme. And then the very last thing I just want to mention is, in terms of the rest of this year, today is the 25th of January, that's the top one there. Leap year, 29th of February is the last Thursday of February, so we have a session then. It's the BI news flashes, so CEO will be doing the news December and January and February, so there's quite a lot of news that he'll cover there. And then there's some flashes. Stefan is doing a flash on Fabric, which is cool. And then I'm going to do one on time intelligence, particularly because it's, leap year and how to deal with all of that stuff. Okay, so that's February. Then normally there'd be one in March, but there's Easter in the way. And then normally, at the end of March, and then normally there'd be one at the end of April, but then there's a public holiday end of April. So what we agreed is we'd actually move in between both the March and April and just combine them into one event. So it is out of cycle, it's not normal, it's the 11th of April, okay? And then after that, it just goes back to the last Thursday of every month, 30th of May, 27th of June, and so on. Okay, so I've covered the merge of the March, April, I've covered February session. Oh, and the last thing is thank you for all those who were here in November. We did a survey, and we got people volunteering and all making suggestions for some topics for future events. We've got a nice list, and we'll go through that. And those who've volunteered will be knocking on your door soon for the, I was almost said the March event, but actually the 11th of April event or the May or June events. Okay. All right, have I missed out anything, Stefan or Rian?
Maybe just one thing to prevent any confusion. If you should go to the Meetup page and just see TBC, we've booked all the events on Meetup in advance for the year, just so you can RSVP to them and get them into your calendar. But obviously, some of the details still need to be confirmed. So we normally update it about a week or week and a half after the previous event. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right, tremendous. All those online, thank you once again for attending. I think we're going to stop sharing and probably put ourselves on mute here as we mingle and eat pizza. Oh, I should actually say, Intellect, thank you very much for hosting and for catering, as usual. Very generous. Thank you. Yeah.